Hey guys, Matthew here. It's been a little while since my last upload. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the actual data from the boss farming as every single thing has been completed. As you can see, we have exceeded expectations on a lot of these bosses. We have hit the absolute minimum on all of them. So I'm very happy. I do want to say a massive thank you to my community for helping me out with this. Honestly, doing this all by myself would have been pretty much impossible just from time constraint. So now that we actually have all the data, I went ahead and updated the Casual Exile document. As you can see now under the bossing page, there are a lot of new bosses with a lot of new numbers, which take into consideration all of the new drops. Now, it's very rare that GG actually goes ahead and does changes to drop rates that are drastic, if you will, from one league to another. Now, of course, this league, there was the massive change to the Eldritch bosses, right? The amulets drop rates was changed massively from like 20% to like 2%. But those kind of changes are extremely rare. So you can expect this data to be completely fine. And at the very least, even if some minor changes are introduced, it should not be that much different, right? Like a 1% here or there should not really, differ that much in the grand scheme of things overall. So there's a few things I want to talk about. First off, when I made the original spreadsheet with all of the actual results from these different farming strategies, right? Like, for example, from farming Blight or Metamorph or Strong boxes, right? When I made this spreadsheet, a lot of people were asking for the actual raw data, right? Like, where did these numbers come from? They were stored in my database, which means they were not public, which means nobody got to see them. However, in this case, the data is all public. If you wanted to see what people got, right, from each of these bosses, basically, you can do so by simply looking at the boss skill data. I'll have a link of the boss skill data in the Casual Exile spreadsheet. Now, you may or may not have to make a new copy of the spreadsheet because, of course, I've made a lot of changes. I've done a lot of things. So I think that you'll probably need to make a new copy if you already have one in order to get access to the new numbers, the new calculations, because even some of the old bosses were, in fact, changed. For example, Maven did not have the impossible escape jewels, right? That was not a drop. So Maven was actually a negative profitability wise in the in this sheet up until we added the impossible escapes, right? The thing is, we needed the data. How often do you get an impossible escape? And then, of course, what's the average price of an impossible escape? These numbers take everything in consideration. Now, a lot of questions in regards to these numbers that I get is essentially, what are we looking at in terms of putting like the price like invested versus what we return? So everything that you see here, all these numbers are considering bulk, right? So you're not going to make 50C profit if you just go in and you do one shaper set, probably, right? You're going to make 50C per shaper set if you do it in bulk. Now, the reason for that is because most people who want to farm bosses for profit are going to be doing a lot of them, right? Like, why would you ever want to start farming Shaper if you're going to do 3 of them? Now, you're going to do 30, you're going to do 50, you're maybe going to do 300. Who knows? Over the course of League, you could do thousands, right? So that's why we use bulk prices. That also means that we are using bulk prices for what we actually buy them from, right? So let's take, for example, profit per Shaper. We are taking the price of a Shaper set, which we are getting from TFT, from their trade bot, their API, which is basically looking at the price of sets that people are selling for. And then we are using the price also on TFT in terms of selling for the Uber sets. And then this is where we come up with this number, which is why if you might be wondering, like, I did a few Shapers and I totally didn't make, 50C profit, or I did a few Maven, or a few Uber Maven, I totally didn't make 120C profit each kill, right? Because 120C profit per Uber Maven is pretty insane, right? You can do roughly, 20-ish Mavens per hour on an extremely good build that will basically insta-phaser every single time. If you're doing like 20 Mavens per hour, that's quite a bit of money at the end of the day. That's like 2,400 chaos or something, so well over 10x an hour in Uber Mavens. But, of course, this considers the fact that you're doing it in bulk, right? Now, another thing is a lot of the new bosses, when it comes to Uber boss farming in them, I apologize for not being on D&D here, a lot of the new bosses are actually very RNG dependent. And what I mean by that is a lot of the currency from a lot of these bosses are going to depend on 1, 2, or 3% drop rates. This is a little bit unfortunate, but it's GGG trying to add more chase items into the game. The issue is the price of the sets has kind of standardized to the fact that you need to be able to do the Uber version of a boss in order to make profit, right? For example, if you look at Maven, if you're not able to do the Uber Maven, you'll only make about 24C profit per run. It's pretty bad. However, if you can do the Uber version, you'll be making over 5 times that amount, or close to 5 times that amount, right? So there's a massive, massive, massive discrepancy between whether you're able to do the Uber version or not. For example, I think the biggest one is the Uber Elder. If you look at Uber Elder, which is right here, Uber Elder at the very moment is actually a loss of currency because the Watcher's Eyes are not selling for more than 3 times the price of a set, and they have a 33% drop rate. So it's actually a loss. You need to be able to do the actual Uber version of the boss in order to get profit. Now, of course, this does not consider that you could sell challenges, you could sell carries, etc., etc. And of course, this is also at a later point in the league, but these numbers are taking everything into consideration, so you can absolutely trust them as long as you are buying in bulk and selling in bulk. If you're not, then these numbers are probably not going to be what you can expect. So, next we also have the Uber invitations. You'll see Uber Formed, Uber Twisted, Uber Elder Slayer. What that means is that essentially that you have, oh, my game is really tiny. But what that means is that you have this node over here, Height of Hubris, as well as Captivated Interest, which makes it the Uber version, right? Because it's twice as hard due to the 100% increased effective modifiers on your invitations. And then, of course, all bosses release at once. This is going to give you a significant amount of quantity and a significant amount of extra drops. I mean, if we look at the profit, for example, if you were to farm the Form, you would make 150C. If you can farm the Uber version of the Form at the same speed, you're making an extra 40 chaos per invitation, which takes maybe, I don't know, not even 10 minutes to do, right? So it's an extra couple X an hour, or an extra X or 2 per hour, depending, of course, on the invitation, just because you can do the Uber version, or at least the harder version, if you want to call it that. So that is the case for a lot of these bosses. Now, I was actually a little bit disappointed almost when I saw the profit for the Form and the Uber version. Like, most of them, you're making a little bit more profit, but it's actually not that crazy. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that the actual fragments are the bulk of the money, right? So, for example, when you're doing the Form, the bulk of your currency is going to come from the 6 Shaper fragments, which are guaranteed every run, right? Because you get 4 fragments, and then you have the double Guardians, which means you actually get 2 more fragments, since the second Guardian, which spawns, has a 50% chance to drop his, which essentially means you get 6 every time on average. And then, of course, you're also going to get some from the invitations, which is affected by quantity, but I definitely thought it would be a little bit more. And I think the massive difference here is the price of the Maven sets. Maven sets are very cheap, and I think that's why there's such a small difference between getting, say, 4 or 5 fragments versus 8 or 9 fragments, because you're actually getting double the amount of fragments, which should be pretty significant, right? But that's almost the only thing that changes. Yes, you're going to get more, over conflicts. Yes, you're going to get more of the fragments that sometimes drop from the invitations alongside other things. But the majority of the time, it's really just going to be in the Maven's Writs, which is going to be the big difference. And because they're so cheap, the difference is pretty minimal. However, I'm pretty confident that whenever next league starts in about a month, and we see the profitability of the Uber version versus the regular version of these bosses, it's going to be pretty significant. I'm talking probably 60-70% more if you're able to do the Uber version, because of course the Maven sets are very expensive in a league start scenario, and Exalts are also way cheaper. Exalts being at 180C is pretty insane. But yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you guys today. Hopefully this information and this data is going to be beneficial to a lot of you guys who are, either getting into bosses now, maybe practicing for next league, or of course, if you're just somebody who really likes to boss, but who's been wondering what is the best thing to actually farm, or, again, in the upcoming league for whatever plan that you might have. But I do want to say, again, a massive shout out and a massive thank you to everybody who helped me out when it came to farming this data, because, again, this would not have been possible without my community. So huge shout out to them. Now, I also want to say a massive thank you before I go to my patrons. So Jaden and Rocky, Max Olmok, Exo, Miss Rascoral, Thomas Mass, Naked the Great Master, Alex, Tim, Mercury, Bert, Kai, Neelid, Jarvis, Jolman, Bitizen, Vaith, Talsmar, and Ando Drago, as well as Sinzeter. Now, Of course, if your name is not on there, I haven't updated this in a little bit, so I apologize for that. There's been a lot of new patrons, honestly, and I really want to say thank you guys for that, as you are basically enabling me to do this as a full-time job. So hopefully you guys had a great league. Looking forward to the next one. I personally have signed out about a week ago after pretty much reaching my goal. Not quite, but almost there. My goal was to get 69 mirrors of Calandra because, you know, 69 is a funny number. We actually got ourselves 65. Now, there is still a month to go, and I still do have some items which are getting mirror services, so it is possible. It's getting harder and harder as mirrors are passing the 600x mark, which is pretty insane in a temp league. It just goes to show that recombinators are truly and absolutely insane. Anyways, that is Matthew signing out. Until next one. Peace.